All right, it's Bristol, baby. What's going on? It's fast cars, fast money. It's just me and Coop here for this weekend. We're going to be breaking down the Truck Series and the Cup Series, doing something that at least the Cup Series hasn't done in over like 50 years, but Truck Series has been doing it for a handful of years now. But we're going to be racing on dirt. So, what does that mean for DFS purposes? Coop and I are going to tell you kind of, how we're approaching this weekend, some of our initial questions that we've been asking ourselves, kind of our thought process going into it, and how we're really just going to approach this weekend. This weekend is so different than anything like we've ever seen. I'm sure it's going to be a very entertaining races with the Truck Series and the Cup Series, but from a DFS standpoint, it's going to be a little bit different than some of the normal guys that we're plugging in. So, Coop, you ready to kind of dive into some of our initial thoughts?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's start with the Truck Series here. And always, guys, thank you so much for checking out the video. If this is helpful to you at all, feel free to like it, ask us any questions in the comments down below, subscribe so you're not missing out on future videos, and then also hop over on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM. We're going to be updating these spreadsheets as it gets closer to race time, so you'll know exactly what guys we're really interested in. But right now, it's really hard to tell until we figure out where these guys are starting. But let's start with the Truck Series. So I think the first thing we need to talk about, Coop, is there's more people showing up than are going to make the race. So these heat races are going to be very intense. Not everyone that shows up is going to race. So people are going to be sent home. So I'm anticipating these heat races to be very aggressive. Probably a lot of chaos. Probably going to see maybe even some people sliding out, wrecking people, cautions. Like, you're going to want to tune into the heat races for one, see who makes the race, and two, get a good understanding of, what cars are good, what guys feel comfortable. But is there anything else, Coop, about some of these people not making the show that you really wanted to touch on, or is that pretty much it
Well,
there?
I'm going to jump down to number 5 you got there. When to build lineups, because I think it ties well into the first point. You can't build lineups, especially for the truck race, until the heat races are over, because, like we said, not everybody's going to make it, and you certainly don't want to make your lineup before you know where everybody's starting and then have one of your drivers not make it and just shoot yourself in the foot from the get-go. So definitely check back in after the heat races, even if you're not able to watch them. Highly recommend watching them. If you can't, definitely go back and check your lineups. And also with these heat races, that's how they're going to determine the starting grid. So somebody that might be the most expensive driver might start first. They might start dead last and barely make it through the heat race. So you definitely need to check in on the apps and get your lineup set after the heat races.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, I think what myself and, I think what you're looking at as well is there's going to be 2 practice sessions for the Truck Series and the Cup Series on Friday. You're going to want to tune into those and just see who looks comfortable out there, who's making good laps, who looks like they're getting into a rhythm. And then I'm also looking at some of this quote unquote bad equipment. So, for example, we see Chase Briscoe racing this week in a bad car. Some other Cup guys are coming down, and the equipment that they're jumping in isn't the top-notch equipment that they're normally in. So I'm curious of how does their lap times compare to some of the other guys that maybe don't have as much dirt experience but are in much better equipment. Because that will really help, I think, with when you're building lineups of like, hey, Chase Briscoe has a lot of dirt experience, but if his car isn't running nearly as well or as fast as some of the other guys in play, like, he's probably not worth the really expensive price tag that he has. So I think the practice and the heat races are really going to help me narrow down my player pool a little bit. But the other thing too that I think Coop will touch on a little bit here is, you don't want to build your lineups until the starting grid comes out, because I think, are you treating this more like a super speedway?
I am, but I think, again, this is going to be a race where I make multiple lines, and I'm going to have a couple different approaches, I think. And it all depends on where folks end up. But that is going to be my main strategy, is to treat this as a super speedway approach somewhat, because I do weigh the drivers that have a lot of experience and a lot of good history on dirt a little more than I would weigh somebody who's good on a super speedway and has had a lot of success on the super speedways. I think I'm hoping it'll be a little less random, but again, this hasn't happened in so long, we have no idea. So I'm definitely going to be playing guys starting in the back. The other tricky part about this is I think qualifying through the heat races will really show you which cars have speed. And so it's also going to be tough. I don't want to play guys starting in the very back, because that means they didn't do so hot in the heat races unless they crashed or there was another scenario. So that I do plan on playing guys starting in the back, but I'm not going to go so extreme to start everyone in the back. I do want to get those drivers in, like the Kyle Larsons, the Christopher Bells, the guys that have a lot of experience on dirt and have a proven track record on dirt, and make sure that I do.
Yeah, I think those are really great points of like, usually when you go to a super speedway, the saying is you hear is stack the back, and, you're hoping for, the big one where it takes out 8, 12, 15 cars at a time. That could happen, very well at this dirt track. Like, we just don't know what to expect, but, these are long races. I would say place differential is probably more important than getting a lap leader or the guy that's going to run fast laps. But you got to think of how many laps are in this race too. So being able to pair maybe some really attractive place differential plays, and then still maybe grab 1, 2, or even 3 guys who you think have a chance to be out front for a bulk of the race, run those fast laps and be picking up those dominator points, because then you can build a line of, dominators and another line of half your other line is the place differential plays. And I think this is also a week where, like, there's just so much uncertainty, and I think it's a little bit more of a level playing field, kind of like a super speedway is, that I think you really have to look at ownership. And if a guy's going to be really chalky, maybe pivoting to a guy that might have the same amount of upside that he has. So I think the last thing we really want to talk about with the trucks is, look at maybe some of the past Eldora races, not necessarily of like, hey, what were their results, but how many times did that driver, run on dirt before? Like, how much experience does he have in a truck specifically compared to like a dirt car that's meant for the dirt, just because they drive completely different. So, I want to probably focus on those guys that have a little bit more dirt experience, and then maybe some of the guys are starting in the back. And then switching over to like the cup side of things, there's a lot of cup drivers that are dropping down in the truck race. They could be getting some extra laps. So I think that really boosts their potential and, almost their ownership probably too for Sunday's show. Is there anything else, Coop, that you wanted to touch on at the trucks before we hop over to the cup?
Yeah, I think you touched on it right there, but pay attention in the truck race. If you're able to watch both races, pay attention to how the NASCAR Cup guys do in the truck race and how they're able to handle the equipment on dirt. A lot of these Cup drivers have been trying to get into dirt races on Bristol the past couple of weeks and get as many laps in as they can. And some of them have crashed out in the first lap of the heat races. So, but if they get into the main race, they make it, right? Because not everybody's going to make it. If they do make it, and they get a decent starting spot and they run the full race, really pay attention to how well they line up against the trucks. It's totally different equipment, but if they handle the dirt well in the trucks, they most likely will be able to handle it well in the cars too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. And if they last the entire race, or at least the bulk of it, they'll be able to see the track changing over the laps that they're putting down, and be able to read the track that much better, maybe for their race on Sunday, to be able to navigate the different lines and how to continue to, run fast laps and just keep that momentum up. So as you guys see, the spreadsheets are blank right now, but once the heat races are done, like, we'll go on here and we'll update it, and we'll put all of our interest levels in there like we normally do. if you guys want access to it, just you can follow us on at Fast Cars FM. We'll be updating this throughout the weekend to give you guys a really clear understanding of where we're at. But looking at the Cup Series, it's almost the same thing as the Truck Series. I would say it's a little bit different just because we know everyone's going to make the race here, whereas in the Truck Series, like some people are going to be going home, but it's kind of the same thing. Like you want to build your lineups after the heats. You want to use the practice in the heat races as kind of like an eyeball test to see who is, running well. Who do you think is going to perform well in the race? Are some of these dirt ringers and these bad equipment cars, are they in play, or are they completely off the pace? Kind of the lineup construction that we talked about. And we still think there's going to be a ton of cautions, what we're targeting. And like Coop said, it's a week that you want to play a lot of multiple lines, a lot of drivers. You don't want to exclude a ton of people, and you don't want to be overweight on one guy either. So, what do you think, Coop? Anything really different for you when you're looking at the Truck Series versus the Cup Series from approach?
No, I think you just will learn something from the truck race, right? Whatever it may be. And my approach might be different by the time the Cup race comes around based off of what happened from the truck race. I think, there's a lot of cars on this track for dirt. I'm interested to see how many wrecks there are and how many cautions there are in the truck race. And it's not to say it's 1-to-1 and it's going to correlate perfectly over to the Cup race either. But I think this hasn't happened in a long time, and I'm interested to see how the truck race plays out. My approach may change in the Cup race based on how the truck race goes. And I will say real quick, I did two drivers they did a really good job of pricing the drivers that have the most experience on dirt. Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Stenhouse, Briscoe. They did a really good job. Normally you would see a Harvick or a Truex or a Keselowski in those more expensive positions, and you'd see Stenhouse and Briscoe and Austin Dillon a little less expensive. Do a little bit of research and see if you can figure out who has some dirt background. I think it will really be important for them. It's not to say that they're going to avoid a caution because somebody else got into them by any means, but I think that history on dirt is important too. And two drivers I like in particular, just again, we have to see how the heat races go out, but Ryan Newman has some experience on dirt, and he's not all that expensive. He's a pretty good value play from a high level without knowing the starting grid. And then in the truck race, Haley Deegan has experience on dirt too, and she was also cheaper than a lot of the other folks that have the same amount of experience. So those are two drivers that will be on my radar, and I'm going to be watching them in the heat races and seeing how they do and where they end up on the starting grid and just seeing how they look.
Yeah, great points. I think you can really learn a lot from this truck race and apply that to the Cup race, and either, double down and hammer the strategy that you used for the Truck Series, or say, hey, based on how the Truck Series played out, I think I'm going to change my approach a little bit for the Cup Series. So that's really going to be it. I know this weekend's a little bit different than kind of our normal weekend, where we look at the different, the different tier groups of prices and tell you who we like and who we don't like. It's just a little bit too early in the week for that, but we wanted to put some content out there for you guys. So yeah, if you can hang around and keep up with us on Twitter, we'll be fine tuning this as the week progresses, and hope you guys all enjoy Bristol.
Yeah, and tune in after the heat races. We'll be putting up more content, and we'll be going through the driver breakdown after the heat races too.